What's the most backwards, outdated thing that happens at your workplace just because that's the way we've always done it? As a trial lawyer in Massachusetts, you refer to the opposing lawyer as my brother or my sister in court. It's not mandatory, but it's very common. My brother-in-law. So I'm in IT at my company, been here for about a year now. Some of you may know that the way Office 365 works now, Outlook, Excel, Word, is that you can't just buy Office all in one shot anymore. You have to buy licenses for each individual, or just buy them in bulk and assign them accordingly. My company has had like 5 different IT directors in the past 4 years, so there are basically no policies in place whatsoever. This also includes employee termination. The company has a total of roughly 3,500 employees. But the other day I ran a report to see how many active licenses we have out, and we are about to hit 10,000 active licenses. TLDR, my company has been paying for 10,000 Office licenses for less than half of the amount of employees it has, and no one has done a single thing about it for years. I've found this mentality changes quickly when licensing costs are moved out of IT and into the individual departmental budgets. I come to my work, I pass security scan. It is logged into database. I open the door to the building with my personal passcode. It is logged into database. I ascend to my floor and open the door to the office with the same card. It is logged into database. I turn on my computer using personal password. It is logged into database. And after that I must check into the paper logbook to prove that I was on time. And don't even dare to lie about your arrival time in the logbook. Our accounts department accept invoices electronically, but then they print them out, stamp them with today's date and scan them back and again. Roughly 100-150 invoices every day. It's absolutely batshit. I'm a lifeguard at a brand new water park in my area. Management insists that all lifeguards use metal whistles, but the metal whistles are too hard to hear over the usual din of the water park. I explained how the plastic whistles are better, and they said they won't use plastic whistles because the management team is trained to listen for the metal whistles. Too bad they won't hear them. LOL at saying the management team is too stupid to listen for multiple kinds of whistles. My former boss, the dean of a university, refused to use a computer, and so every day I would print out all his emails throughout the day. Then when he came to the office he would dictate his responses for me to type. The response had to be printed first before the email was sent so he could proofread it. If he changed something it had to be printed again and again until it was right. He also never threw any emails away, and I had to hole punch every single one and put them in a binder. He's retired now, but I guarantee there's over 100 email binders still hidden in the building. It's absolutely ridiculous that people can behave this way, refusing to use an integral piece of technology and still making hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. While investigating a blown up pump, we discovered the preventative maintenance check of greasing the bearings was scratched out. Upon further investigation, it was because it has always been scratched out. LOL, we had a pump blow recently at my plant, but management got really mad when everyone was talking about the pump blowing up, so we were instructed that the pump didn't blow up. It overpressured to the point of rupture. Medical records coordinator for a mental health agency here, using physical charts for patients, despite having an electronic health record system for 10+ years. At my previous job at a mechanical engineering company, they have an employee who until 5 years ago was drafting everything by hand instead of using AutoCAD. My dad is a mechanical engineer. He drew up the plans for my childhood home and they are immaculate. I would seriously frame them and put them on the wall if I had enough wall space. Oh, I got this. Worked for a major ski company doing data analysis for a winter free ski pass. They use a program called Lotus 123 to set their lodging rates. If you're not familiar with Lotus, it's because you were born after the 80s. Lotus is the ancestor of Excel. It is the first spreadsheet software made. At work, they ran a virtual DOS program so they could run this program. Working on it was a waking nightmare. All those features you take for granted with Excel, like being able to hit undo as many times as you want, hitting enter or tab to move your cell, formula assistance, yeah, go frick yourself. Lotus doesn't have crap. Boggles my mind. but the founder likes it because he learned Lotus in college in 1982. They stopped support on this program in 1987. Then there's Notes and Domino. If you think Lotus 123 is archaic, Domino is a great old one, howling and gibbering madness from its 11 mouths as it croons the song that will blacken the midnight sun. I work in an office. At least 80% of the work we do could be done on Excel spreadsheets. Instead, only 20% is done that way, with most of it being spearheaded by me and one accountant who has since been moved to IT, and 80% is done by printing up reports and reviewing them and then shredding the pages. In most offices I've worked, the printer in a department with less than 10 people would maybe need to have its paper tray filled once or twice a month. Here we do it about once or twice a day. I was specifically hired because of my experience and background in data retrieval, analysis and organization. My first month with the company, after learning my job and the duties of the people I work with, I was asked to create several reports outlining how we could be more efficient using better and more modern techniques. During a department meeting, I outlined several of the things we could do to increase productivity, decrease wasted time and resources and be more accurate. While the manager and supervisor were excited, everyone else in the office kept pointing out how this couldn't work or we have to do it the same way we've been doing it. The excuses were basically them saying, who the heck does this guy think he is? I'm not learning any new stuff. So 6 months later nothing's changed. One person in the office hates me, and I'm doing crap the way everyone else has been doing it for the last 20 years. I can feel most of my Excel and database management skills and knowledge evaporating from my mind due to lack of use. But the job pays well, and since we do everything so old-fashioned, there's lots of overtime. And I make an hourly rate. I'm not salaried. You are getting paid to waste time. It's their hours to utilize however they want. I work in a machine shop. We have state-of-the-art 5-axis CNC machines, HSM software and CAM programs. We hold tolerances down to 0.0001 of an inch. Our programmers computerize and network to our machines, something that's been able to be done for 30 plus years. I load each program on with a USB drive. Then after finishing the part, my insane coworker deletes it because it will clog up the hard drive otherwise. Because he is about 70 and thinks putting things on a hard drive makes the machine slower. Our programmers computerize and network to our machines, something that's been able to be done for 30 plus years. Just trying to keep the Cylons from operating your CNC. At my previous job, left not even 4 months ago, we were required to input work hours every month by filling an Excel spreadsheet, printing it, signing it, scanning it and mailing it to HR. I'm pretty sure they're gonna keep doing this for years. I was interviewing for a sales and tech support phone job. Told the owner that I was well versed in several contact management solutions, and that I would be right for the job. He just nodded and said that they had a great system for customer information. The next day, I had an offer, and took the job. On day 1, I learned that their CRM system was a Windows 95 version of Goldmine, running in some weird third-party emulation mode on their Windows XP SP1 workstations. It was from the late 1980s, Y2K compliant, nope, MMDDI only, resulting in the expected erratic behavior. Undo, live with that incorrect entry, or delete the entire contact. Import-export of contacts and data, only via manipulation of a raw database, which they would not allow. Email addresses were limited to 12 characters. Phone numbers were limited to 1 field, and you had to enter the area code in a special notes box. Database crashed at least 4 times a week. It took me 2 years to get them to go with a modern SaaS version. The only way to convince some of the diehards was to call it the new goldmine. And these folks are kind enough to send a broadcast email copying the owner anytime the internet goes down, saying the new goldmine crashed again. And these folks are kind enough to send a broadcast email copying the owner anytime the internet goes down, saying the new goldmine crashed again. That would push me over the edge. I work at a university, so there is a lot of that kind of thing, but one that sticks out is the blue sheet. I used to work in an office that had blue sheets, legal-sized multi-page carbon documents with a blue top sheet, hence the name. Whenever I got a grant application to review, I was supposed to create a blue sheet that summarized a bunch of info: name of researcher, amount applied for, dates of the award, title, etc. The only problem was for the grants that I administered, all of that information was on the front page of the grant application, so I was supposed to copy the information off the front page of the application onto this blue sheet and then attach the blue sheet to the application. I asked why and was told that it was very important and I had to do it. I figured it would be clear at some point, like year end or for an audit or something, so I did them. After being there for a year and never once needing to use one or being asked for one and no one ever being able to tell me what they were used for, I stopped doing them. I made a list of the incoming applications I hadn't done them for so that I could quickly do them up if I was ever asked for them but didn't actually do them. Anyway, one day my boss came in and asked for an application, so I pulled it and gave it to her and she gasped in horror and said, "There's no blue sheet." I thought, finally, I will find out what these blue sheets are for, so I asked her what she needed it for and she said, "Oh, I don't need it. It just has to be there anyway." After much digging I learned that the blue sheet was invented because once upon a time grant applications didn't have the cover sheet. They do now. Sheet 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 they do. But now it is in one handy spot, the front page of the application, and we don't have data entry people anymore since the applications are created online and the information automatically goes into our database. I still couldn't get them to get rid of the blue sheets even after pointing this out. TLDR, pointless paperwork. I used to work for a company that insisted you print off every client email. It was the biggest waste of time and paper. They would just go into storage and be thrown out every few years. So pointless. My brother does this. He paid me once to sort them chronologically when I didn't have a job at the time. Unfortunately for him though, I was on my first playthrough of Game of Thrones at the time and trying to multitask while sorting thousands of emails. I'm an attorney. My entire career field is based on the way we have always done things. My state requires people taking the bar exam to wear a suit for the exam. 2 full days, most stressful test of your life, must wear a suit. There are attorneys in my office who do not type. They only dictate and their secretaries type it out. We print everything. My secretary works for me and 2 other attorneys. The 2 other attorneys she works with are much older than me. When I told her I don't want paper files for every matter, she looked at me like I had 10 heads. "But where will you keep your notes?" she asked. "On our electronic file management system, if you're sure." My husband is also an attorney. He has one case right now where opposing counsel doesn't email. Opposing counsel will fax him letters instead. He gets multiple faxed letters per day from this guy. In my state, to schedule things like hearings or trials, most of time, I have to show up to the court to do it. Even though the clerk has a computer calendar, I still have to drive myself to the court, sometimes several hours, show up, tell opposing counsel and the clerk when I'm available, and then the clerk picks a date. So that's 2 clients minimum, mine and opposing counsel's, that get charged for both of our time driving to the courthouse, sitting there waiting for our case to be called, and talking to a clerk for about 30 seconds about our availability, instead of just having an electronic calendar. Having paper copies of things that we have electronic copies of, it's as if the boss is scared that one day she will come into work and everything will be gone. Thank God for the filing cabinet. At my work, there's a ton of things that are outdated. I'll start with how we need a manager for just about anything aside from bringing in things and paying. Returns? Go to get a manager. Reopening a check to fix it? Manager. Voiding an item after you give the customer a total? You bet your butt we need a manager. Then our registers. They're such an old archaic system that I'm surprised we can't take the chip with them. And if the person you're helping decides they're not done shopping, you're stuck until they pay. Updated some very old HTML yesterday that had an absurd amount of nested tables. Not one of them was used to show the user a table. Also, instead of using one table and different rows, each row was a different table. To add the last piece of fun, most of the cells were filled with a spacer GIF IMG to create margin and padding. Still can't believe what I saw. Sounds like a GeoCities site I made when I was 12. The surveyor insists on measuring all roadwork with a 50-meter tape. Yes, we can do it fairly accurately, but it takes so long. Cars are annoying and we have a perfectly good total station that no one ever used. There has been a DOT crew surveying a road near me. They have been in the same 5-mile stretch for 3 weeks now. I can't help but think they must be using a 6-inch ruler to survey. I work in a butchery shop that sells a lot of crap. I have to count all the products by hand every day and everything is done by hand. My dad sent me to a good school where I excelled in computer application studies. He knows this and doesn't let me set up an easier way of keeping track of all the stock, and it's a pain in the butt to have him insist on the manual way every time I try and convince him to update the system. We don't allow people to specify where their donations go to, so they can't specifically donate to food shelves or to help repair a building. We lose out on so much money, 6-figure donations, because of this, and our leadership doesn't care. That seems like such a fundamentally stupid rule. The fact I model entire job sites in 3D to almost perfect engineering specs, but then engineering has to completely redo them in 2D CAD because that's the only accurate way to do it, and they will only use 2D printouts I have to put together because they refuse to learn 3D programs. Mind you, their 2D CAD isn't even AutoCAD or something good. It's just a basic drawing program with no real dimension tools or any sort of accuracy. Is it 5 yet? And don't even get me started on the fact the shop doesn't even build to any spec and just do whatever they want. I work at an adult bookstore, and my first day on the job, I got the mop out of the closet because I naturally assumed we cleaned up the video booths in the back. Nope. Apparently we had a regular who had been cooming in for years and his kink was to lick it up. When I mentioned the health risks, my boss looked at me askew and said that's the way we've always done it. And that's enough internet for one day. Paper records. For everything. There are people employed by the organization I work for just to cart around medical records all day, every day, 24/7, 365. Somehow, we have not managed to contrive a way of digitizing all of this information, and it's 2018. I once asked the medical director and he just shrugged and said we've always done it this way. I said to him, okay, so imagine instead of employing 20 people to push around carts full of confidential information all day long, you could summon that information at the touch of a button, and those people could be employed somewhere else. He just frowned and said that's not something you should be concerned about. It would cost too much anyway, and that was the day before I handed my notice in. Sweet baby Jesus, I think this thread was made just for me. A couple of years ago, I took a position at a small wood shop as a production manager. Despite being in a small town and having 35 employees, this company has contracts with some of the top names in the luxury marine industry. Where to begin? So part of my job was receiving. Until I started working there, no one bothered to actually look at the parts we were receiving. The guy in the back would just sign the packing slip, and when parts came up missing, we'd reorder them. I started checking in parts against the packing list, and we saved a little under $20,000 in the first month alone. We made paper copies of everything. Orders came in via fax, and the receptionist would get a copy. I'd get a copy, and a copy would go to billing. Every morning, my boss wanted a paper copy of what we had on back order. I showed the receptionist how to get the faxes as a .pdf on her computer and email it out. That lasted about a week. Then it was decided that everyone liked the paper copies better. Same with the various lists I maintained. Back orders, replacements for damaged parts, finished goods inventory, etc. My boss wanted a copy of those on his desk every morning. We're talking like 35-50 pages every day. I set up a network drive and showed him how to access it, but no dice. He wants paper copies of everything. Despite reporting profits of over $4 million for the last several years, and maintaining a database of over 6,000 parts, 90% of the work is done on Excel. I've explained how Access would be better for database management, but we keep using an Excel spreadsheet because no one here knows Access. I wrote some Excel macros to automate a lot of my job, making what used to take 6+ hours every day into a 20-minute job. Lots of copying and pasting. Well, my boss didn't like it because he doesn't trust computers to do the job right and insisted I do it manually. I use my macros. The only errors that happen are in things I have to manually enter for one reason or another, one-off parts, custom colors, finishes, what have you. Basically, the whole company, from a management side, is stuck in 1992. I continue to make attempts to modernize, but my ideas are mostly rejected because that's not how we do things. No, it isn't. But if you did, productivity would increase dramatically and costs would drop pretty quick. I work at a high school, so it's a frustrating blend of trying to do new things and keeping some terrible old things. The American public school system was created around the time of the Industrial Revolution, and we've modeled our schools after those factories and assembly lines. We group kids in batches based on date of manufacture and keep them in that batch their whole high school career, even though we've already proven that kids develop differently and at different rates. We give them a grade based on performance, which in general more accurately measures their ability to regurgitate information than it is to show mastery over a subject. The bells, the early start times, the desks. I could go on and on, but my point is that even when there are multiple studies that show that kids don't benefit or are harmed by early start times, our grading system, standardized tests, and homework, we don't do anything about it because that's the way it's always been done. I highly doubt school times will ever change in the American economy. Parents need to work, so that means school starts early. If it didn't, school would be impossible for some families. I take care of developmentally disabled adults, and we have 13 clients in the house, and I have no idea how the manager got her job. She basically told us that if we don't feel like showering the clients, then we don't have to. As a result, some of the staff won't shower clients for days on end that need to be showered daily for various cleaning purposes. Dude, they are people too, and if you don't want me to shower because it takes too much time, then you need to change the rule or find a new job. It's a college, not a job, but it only went co-ed in 1995, and the alumni are still trying to get it to go back to all boys. And the majority of social events are separated by gender because apparently a lot of the guys think interacting with girls is not worth their time. So we can't really join guys for meals, unless they are close friends. Profs will tell girls to wear dresses more. Other profs do not think girls should attend and say as much. It is fun. So I work as a nanny, so hopefully this counts. The grandmother of the kids I nanny insists on using old school punishment methods with the kiddos. I nanny for a 3-year-old and 1-year-old. The outdated punishments the 3-year-old has gone through include spankings, soap in mouth, and humiliation. I've confronted her grandma about all this stuff. She says that's how she's raised her kids and they're fine. Thing is, she caused the 3-year-old to regress with her potty training. I had this girl pretty trained besides a few accidents. Well, she went to visit her grandma for a weekend and now she's terrified of the potty. We've had to go back to diapers full time again because of it. Please tell me you discussed this specific incident with the parents. If so, I'd love to know what they said. I wonder if they brushed it off and defended grandma, or could see the issue and want to deal with it. We use a lot of outdated libraries frameworks in our code base. These libraries are deprecated for 10 years, but we still use them because they work, and it is hard to convince management of the value of replacing outdated technology. Well, I guess this is pretty common in software development, and some companies still use and have to maintain code written in the 80s. This was a few years ago, but I worked for a federal agency as a consultant. The details are boring, but it took me a year to convince said agency that ordering top secret electronics via an emailed Word document was possibly the dumbest thing ever. The first person I talked to about it said, in all seriousness, how would the vendor make changes if they can't edit the order? One guy at our machine shop does all the lathe programming. He uses a computer running Windows 2000 and a version of the program that is 14 versions out of date. We've tried twice to get him onto the new version of the software because the company only supports the 3 latest versions. We even had a guy from the software company come out to train him personally, but he just will not learn to use it. Hire someone new for him to show the ropes till under the guise of getting set up for a large contract that will take several years to complete. Once the new person is fully trained, give him an ultimatum to either learn to adapt or be fired. There's absolutely no reason as an employer I'd put up with something like this. We still use a paper calendar to schedule meetings, despite everyone having an Outlook account. What could be solved at a quick glance becomes a foray into email communication. Heck, At my last job I was low man on the totem pole in sort of a research admin assistant role. My boss, an attorney, would get a document to review emailed to her. She would print it out, make edits in red pen, hand me the hard copy, email me the electronic version, have me apply her edits, sometimes whole paragraphs, and email it back to her. She was like 45, way too young for that crap. Make the edits directly to the document. I had other stuff to do, so I wasn't thankful for the job security from this useless work. They used to have serial numbers on the computers. They used to go around in teams from office to office to make sure the computers were where they left them. One guy read off the serial number and the other checked it off, until they got barcodes. Now all the computers have barcodes. So a while ago, I was at my desk and a couple guys came around and one read off the numbers on the barcode and the other checked it off a paper list on his clipboard. We can't freaking sit. Americans have this obsession that if we're not standing we're being lazy. So I have to stand in one spot for 10 hours for appearances because of stigma. Mechanical engineer. Some of my older co-workers that don't use AutoCAD viewports and solely work in model space instead of the usual model space and paper space transition. This basically means that they draw a complete one model of a component, copy and paste out parts they need in greater detail. Furthermore, they manually select and drag a window for each and every plot they make. To top it off, if an assembly or structure that consisted of multiple sheets, they would spread those out across multiple files. As in, example, sheet 1 DWG, example, sheet 2 DWG, example, sheet 3 DWG, etc. It was an absolute nightmare. People with CAD experience will get what I mean. They were taught to draw on an old school drawing board and somehow ignored all input from any CAD courses they took over a 30+ year period and decided to stick to the old method for creating drawings. I came into this company to do 3D Autodesk Inventor modeling and was completely baffled once I found out how the 2D CAD drawings were made. That's kind of like the people in my office making graphics in Photoshop and not using layers. People thought I was a witch when I showed them layers. They were all using Photoshop CS5, so there's really no excuse not to use layers, which were introduced I think in Photoshop 4 or 5. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.